Hey, it's Jakob here, coming with an Israel update about the Gaza plan and the new 12-point plan that Washington have brokered out with Netanyahu and with Hamas. So I'm going to just look at the 20 points and try to point to some of the most crucial ones. And then there are some that are very nice and very happy, and everybody is really excited about right now. And then there are some others that might prove to be quite challenging, and we want to try to have a look and try to analyze a bit how could this work out for Israel on the long term. So starting off, of course, we have to celebrate with great joy the hostages that are bound to come back. They say that tomorrow, Monday, by noon, they should be returned. We will see if it goes after the plan, but of course, 2 years in these dungeons in Gaza, horribly treated, maybe family members killed, God knows what, really. That has been a tough one on the families and on the Israeli society. And so this is the big thing being celebrated right now, that eventually there is real hope and faith that these hostages can come home. So that could be enough for this video, just to stop there and just say that this is so incredible. Thank you, God, that they are coming home, and keep praying for it all the way until it's a reality, because we know that Hamas have been breaking pretty much all agreements before. So it would be wonderful if it actually would happen, but we are closer than we have ever been, it really seems. There's a reason why there is joy in the streets and hope on behalf of the families. So that is just wonderful. So there was a 72-hour window for Hamas to return the hostages, and that's what's being worked on right now. So we will see very quickly what will happen with that. And then we know, of course, that Israel is supposed to return a lot of Arab Palestinian prisoners in exchange for the hostages. And so many people have been pointing out that this is not really like a peace agreement. It's a ceasefire, but it's most of all just a ransom agreement, actually. This is the first phase in the Gaza plan, the Trump plan, and has to do with exchanging hostages that are, civilians and soldiers from the Israeli side, of course, that didn't do anything to be taken, that are innocent and have been brutally kidnapped, and it's all just horrible. And in exchange for this, Hamas is going to get was it 250 lifelong prisoners, like that has like a life sentence because of killings and murders and horrible things. And you have the mastermind of the bombs there. There are so many of these profiled jihadists, and even Hamas was really, really pushing to get a lot of the terrorists from October 7th released in exchange for these innocent people that have been tormented. Can you imagine that they pushed to try to get people out of jail that did these atrocities? It should give you a pretty good idea about the light and the darkness in this situation. So this is no mutual swap on equal terms in any kind of sense of the word. This is basically murderers and terrorists being set free for civilians and for innocent people. And so in itself, it's like a crazy setting. I know for many people in Israel, this is very tough to swallow this one, because we know that Yahya Sinwar was one of those who were released in such a prisoner swap years back, and who was the one who was the mastermind behind this horrible atrocity. So there's a big debate going on that point alone. But then if we go on, I also want to mention actually that one of the ones that being released, when he was 16 years old, he went in the West Bank, Judea Samaria area, stabbed a mother to death with a knife who had like 6 children, she and her husband, and killed her in front of 3 of her children. And so this kind of prisoner, are we talking about here? And so it's, of course, moral, ethic question, but to release the hostages is such a huge value for the society in Israel, who values life and who sees this as a greater commandment than helping orphans and widows, actually, because it's a more acute, dramatic need to free hostages, captives that are held by force. So that's that side of the deal. If we're gonna continue here a bit, so basically Gaza is supposed to become a terror-free zone, which is of course wonderful. Hamas is supposed to disarm. There is even like offered amnesty for Hamas members that lay down arms. And so basically Hamas is not thought to have any kind of a role in the future governance of Gaza. But of course, as we know, Hamas and many of these groups, their ideology and their beliefs, you cannot really trust and believe that they are willing to lay down arms, to give up, to become nice and peaceful, or else, there's very little reason to believe that this is something that they will try to do, because their aim is not to get territory. Their aim is not to build Gaza. If they was to build Gaza, they would already have developed Gaza with these millions and billions of dollars that they have been getting from Western countries over so many years. Both have been flooding into West Bank, Judea, Samaria, but also to Gaza. Norway being one of the big funders of that. If they would want to build a place for their own people, it would have looked like Singapore today, as people say. But they built rockets and tunnels, and so their aim, they already showed it in reality. We also know it from their charters. It's to kill the Jews, and it's to establish like a caliphate with Jerusalem as the capital. And the jihad is their path. This has been the decades. We have seen many different groups from PLO, etc., etc. This is their aim. And so you cannot really believe that they want a state. In 2006, Israel pulled out of Gaza, gave them a chance. It never happened. It turned into a terror nest and a horrible nightmare on October 7th. So that's maybe enough for that. Of course, I think US and Israel are fully aware of this. And so there is a plan to also set in place a technocratic committee, also like a political Palestinian committee, and is supposed to operate under an international transitional body, with maybe chaired by Trump and maybe with Tony Blair or something like that in it. And also there is talk about some kind of like peacekeeping force or body to oversee that this agreement is held, also with regional guarantors for the situation. So I think this, and also, one key point in the plan is that Israel is not to occupy or annex Gaza. And that is supposed to be developed with respect for different religion, and become more developed for people to enjoy the place and live there in peace, etc., etc. So I think you have basically three different ways of looking at the whole situation. The first perspective is the hostages, which is incredible, and I have great respect for Benjamin Netanyahu. I think probably they think one step at a time. They know that to get the hostages out, one of the big war goals, one of the two main ones, is something that they really need to do. And then maybe after that happens, maybe then they will start to see what will be the next steps, really. Because I think after that first perspective of the hostages freed out, which is problematic itself with the swap, but then the second perspective on this has to do with the future of Gaza and Israeli security. And I think if Hamas, even if Hamas kind of goes out of their role, and they talk about reforming the Palestinian Authority in Judea, Samaria, West Bank, which we also know has a really horrible history. They've just gone a little bit more political, but they fund the terrorists and their families who kill Jews. They have the same goals to take over. They don't want their own state in that sense. They don't want a peaceful coexistence. So whoever it's going to be, it's not looking great for Israel if they are then kind of blocked from being able to control Gaza, if they have then signed on to not annex it at any time, or even pull out even more than what they have now. Now, 50% they have pulled out with the IDF. And I think also US involving powers like, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, other Muslim nations are getting involved, also perhaps in overseeing this thing. That might be a tricky point for Israel in the future. And the reason why I want to make the point is that right now you have the Trump administration. As long as he's there, as long as Huckabee is there, and these people that have a real heart for Israel, things are great. But for the next election, you might have a very different administration. And if then Israel has kind of given mandates to these countries over its own territory, and who might turn on them later, it could become very tricky. So I think it's a big, big question mark on these parts of the deal for Israel. But I have great respect for Netanyahu, and I think it's too early to say how this actually is gonna spell out. Then the third perspective on the deal that is important to understand is that for Trump, this is probably also possibly a part of a bigger thinking about the Abraham Accords. So he has now pulled in maybe even Indonesia and many Muslim countries, getting them on board. Probably there are deals being made, and as you know, he probably wants to make a greater peace. It's been talking about the Nobel Peace Prize. And he would like to create a peace treaty, not just like a swap of prisoners or something only for Gaza, but a peace in the Middle East, basically, a peace between Israel and the Muslim countries. So it's a grand project. I think it's one of the reasons why he is also involving these countries in the Gaza situation now and getting them on board. So it's a grand project, but the question again is whether this will become a reality really. When you look to the ideology that they have, Erdogan giving school books to schools in Jerusalem, saying that Jerusalem belongs to the Ottoman Empire, all the jihadi ideologies, so it's a wonderful idea. But we will see what will happen. Maybe, as you see with Saudi Arabia, when you have a leadership that is changing, becoming more focused on development and economic development, it could happen. So I think it's incredible what Trump is doing. It's wonderful. It's going to be very exciting to see what will happen with all these countries and how this might spell out. But maybe the biggest question mark is still for Israel, how to maintain real security guarantees for territories that are so close to where the Jewish population live, and to be able to keep the kind of control to be able to do what's necessary to protect its citizens. That's been the idea with the Jewish state all the way from after the Holocaust, and that never again should there be situations where the Jewish people could not be defended, protected against those who want to murder them. And in a time with an incredible rising anti-Semitism, we have to keep in mind not just the short-term goals, but also the long-term goals. And I'm sure that this is something that Netanyahu has thought about a lot. So let's celebrate today about the hostages coming home and praying for their release. And also wait a bit and see how this will spell out, and hoping for a brighter future, and that this can have a good outcome. But I think it's too early to say exactly where the road's going to lead after step one of this plan. So thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'm going to try to keep on doing some analytical work on these things in the time to come. So God bless you and shalom.